so much, everyone, for staying with us. It's not a good day as Nigeria records a first death in the coronavirus battle. The Minister of Health has again asked Nigerians to yield to some of the cautions that the government is giving out in the wake of what has become a pandemic in the world. The Minister of Health says today that Nigerians should practice self-isolation and social distancing in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the country. He confirmed that of 36 state cases recorded so far, there has been one death, while 32 are clinically stable and one is dependent on oxygen. 26 of the confirmed cases have traveled history to countries with high burden of virus. 6 contracted the virus from the travel cases, while 4 contracted it from unconfirmed sources. The NCDC said that the country's first COVID-19 fatality had underlying medical conditions, multiple myeloma and diabetes, and was undergoing chemotherapy. The family of the 67-year-old victim had told Channels Television that he died of COVID-19. Meanwhile, the son of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Elijah Atiku Abubakar, has tested positive for coronavirus. The former vice president announced this on his Twitter handle earlier today while calling for prayers for his son's recovery. It is not confirmed yet. And the governor of Bauchi State says that Mr. Bala Muhammad has gone into self-isolation after subjecting himself and some of his aides to the COVID-19 test. The chief of staff to the governor, Mr. Najibu Muazu, said in a tweet that the governor decided to self-isolate after former vice president Atiku Abubakar announced that his son has tested positive to the virus. Well, we can tell you that some news just coming in. We understand now that the Federal Executive Council meeting has been suspended indefinitely, and the federal government has also asked federal public servants to work from home with staff of from grade level 1 to 12 to work from home. Some of the news just coming in. We give you details as much as we get some of those stories. And to some of the stories that we shall be staying on tonight. There is bated breath over what people in Zamfara State, and particularly in the APC and the PDP, are anticipating the Supreme Court judgment, which the APC and the former governor Yari had gone to the Supreme Court to ask for an application to review the judgment of the Apex Court over the judgment given by the Supreme Court. There's been allegations and counter-allegations from the two political parties. The PDP is alleging that the APC wants to twist the Supreme Court to give the judgment in its favor, while the APC has responded that it is intervening in a matter it does not concern it. Let's get a sense of what this means for our politics, especially in the wake of the judgment that we saw in Bayelsa and Imo State. What does this mean, and where do we go from here? I have 2 lawyers on the program tonight to give a sense of all of these. I have Mr. Vincent Okorafor here with me in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have from Abuja via Skype, it's Mr. Daniel Buala. Thank you so much, Mr. Buala, for coming on tonight. It seems that, Mr. Okorafor, perhaps a good way to begin with you is to ask, this case does not concern the PDP because the PDP was not benefited from the case, but is obviously not joined in the matter.
Well, to begin with, let me first and foremost also say that, the PDP and Nigerians generally, are to be affected by whatever outcome comes out, that comes out from the final ruling from the Supreme Court as regards the Zamfara, application for the review of the judgment entered. That should be about on the 24th day of May, 2019. You see, one thing about the rulings of courts or the judgments of court is that in the eyes of the law, it is the law. And so, whenever there is an existing law the force of that law binds, runs across the federation, especially when it is from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court Act is very clear that the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court runs across the federation. So whatever it says is law.
But I mean, the question here is that
Yes.
what is, because this is the question the APC is is asking the PDP,
Yes.
that this matter does not concern the PDP. It was just a beneficiary of the outcome of that judgment. It's basically an internal APC crisis which disqualifies the entire gamut of the APC involvement in that election. Is the PDP jittery of what may come out of that application of the review?
Well, I want to look at it objectively. I would rather say that the PDP is not jittery, but the PDP, just like many Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians are also interested in the outcome of whatever comes out at the end of the day. Because, for instance, who will be the ultimate beneficiary of whatever comes out from that ruling? Is it the APC or the PDP or the electorate? However, I'm also trying to look at it very objectively, in the sense that there is no need for anyone to be jittery on this issue. There's no cause for alarm. The Supreme Court had, in previous instances, or cases, ruled that its decisions are final. In Section 235 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended up to its fourth alteration, it is clear that the Supreme Court, the finality of the judgment or ruling of the Supreme Court remains final for all ages, as was heard in the case of the Leon's case, that's the Bayelsa case, where the Honorable Justice Amina Oge, with tears in her eyes, said that the Supreme Court had, over time, stated emphatically that it cannot reverse its earlier judgments, once it has finally, with finality, determined a particular case. And so now, with the precedent we have, with the precedent, because that case was actually a very, it was a good one, because after the Leon's case came the, we also had the Imo State.
So you are saying, in essence, because of these two cases,
Yes,
that there is a possibility that the Supreme Court will not reverse itself?
The case is sub judice, and
Okay,
I wouldn't
so,
want to preempt them, but I would rather say that there are precedents already on ground, and other
to favor the PDP in this matter.
I'm not saying whether it's going to favor the PDP or the APC, but
you are saying there is a possibility, because
what
the viewers want to know your point. That what are you saying, in essence, that there's a possibility that the Supreme Court might follow in the way of the Bayelsa judgment? Is that what you're saying?
There is a precedent, and I believe, strongly, that my view is on this is that the Supreme Court cannot and should not,
reverse itself.
Reverse
All right, let's hear from Mr. Daniel Bwala. I tried to allow Mr. Okorafo to give a background to some of his arguments on this matter. But what do you make of what is happening in Zamfara State, especially from the standpoint of the APC? We think that they have a good chance in this matter.
Well, thank you for having me. PDP in this instance is what we call meddlesome interloper, or if you want to use the market woman's word to say it's a busybody, trying to intrude into a matter that PDP is not involved in, has not been invited, and therefore is a meddlesome interloper. Now, the principle of law, which must be accepted and agreed by even the lawyer in your studio, myself, and in fact, LLB students in the university under the doctrine of stare decisis, is that the decision of the Supreme Court binds all court, but that decision does not bind the Supreme Court. There are also authorities in our law where the justices of the Supreme Court have said in their dictum that the Supreme Court can make a mistake and Supreme Court can reverse from its previous decision. That's why Supreme Court is not bound by its previous decision. The law also established conditions on which you can convince the Supreme Court to depart from her previous decision. Now, I am not here to delve into Zamfara matter because it is sub judice. But I am telling you the general principle of law that the judgment of the Supreme Court binds all courts, but that judgment does not bind the Supreme Court. And secondly, Supreme Court is not bound by its previous decision. And the Supreme Court itself said that the Supreme Court consists of human beings who can make errors and therefore can depart from the previous decision. So now facts of the matter is what will determine. Let me give you instance. In the different and cases that go to the Supreme Court are determined on their case by case basis. That's why the case in Bayelsa attracted punitive measure on the lawyers, but the case in Imo did not attract punitive measure on the lawyer. And
All right.
therefore, the case in Zamfara have a different gambit altogether.
Let's take a breather. But when we come back, the argument of the APC, they're saying that, look, what happened in the case of Bayelsa and Imo is different from the case of Zamfara. We look at the difference and why the APC thinks that the PDP is a meddlesome interloper. Who wins in this matter? We'll talk more when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Some of these stories and news just coming in. We can tell you that the federal government has suspended the federal executive, the weekly federal executive meeting indefinitely. Some new policies based on the coronavirus scourge disease and the spread is coming in from the federal government, where that meeting has been postponed. The Council of State meeting too. The federal government has also closed all land borders. All public servants have been below level 12 have been asked to stop work from the time being, and they say the federal government is also asking that the enforcement of social distancing policy, especially on gatherings above 50%, should be maintained. Again, the federal government has suspended its weekly Federal Executive Council meeting indefinitely. The Council of State meeting has also been postponed, and all land borders has also been postponed. We can also tell you right here on China's television that the Chief Justice of Nigeria has directed the closure of all courts as from tomorrow. Extraordinary measures being taken by the federal government of Nigeria in some of the what has become indeed a trying time for the entire world. Stay here with Channel Television as we bring you some of the figures that you may need to know right now as regarding coronavirus and the pandemic globally, and of course the spread in Nigeria. Let's give you some of the global figures now. It's about over 350,000 cases that have been recorded in the world, with over 15,000 deaths recorded. Over 100,000 people have recovered. But in Nigeria, we can tell you that 36 cases have been confirmed, with 33 active cases, 2 people discharged, 1 death. And by some of the highest, 3 countries with the highest cases, we can tell you that China has 81,093 cases with 3,270 deaths. Italy with 59,138 cases and 5,476 deaths. And the United States with 39,389 cases and 467 deaths. Those are some of the figures that we can tell you. Keep it right here on China's television as we bring you up to speed in some of the latest. Let's get back to the conversation and the politics of Zamfara, what it means for the major opposition party, PDP, and of course, the opposition party, PDP, at the national level is a ruling party in Zamfara, a beneficiary of the judgment of the Supreme Court, which favors Governor Matawale. The APC has approached the Supreme Court for a review of that judgment, asking the Supreme Court to reverse itself. What will happen? My guests tonight, 2 lawyers, Mr. Vincent Okorafo right here in our Lagos studio, and Mr. Daniel Boala on Skype from Abuja. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me allow you, Mr. Boala, I bought into what you were saying earlier. Okay, I'll come to you in a while, Mr. Boala. Mr. Okorafo, as it stands right now, the APC is saying the case in Zamfara is different from that of Bayelsa and Imo State, that the PDP is a meddlesome interloper in this matter.
Well, I take an exception to that, to the use of the word in medicine interloper by my learned friend. I think he missed the point when he used that word saying that the PDP is a medicine interloper. It is basic law, and we all know it. And I know my learned friend should also know it, that the word medicine interloper, is used to describe an ideological plaintiff who is a party to a suit.
But is PDP a party?
That is a question my learned friend should answer, because in this situation, since the PDP is not an ideological plaintiff, because there are factions in APC who are before, the Supreme Court. A faction is asking for an application, for the court the Supreme Court to reverse itself. But like I said, the apex court cannot reverse itself, save as is provided under Order 8, Rule 16 of the Supreme Court rules. And then we have the Section 235 of the Supreme Court, of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that says with finality that the decision or the ruling of the apex court is final.
I understand that, Mr.
Yes.
Boala. Just
so
a moment,
in this situation,
so we can give him a
the
fair...
PDP is not
it's not a courtroom, but we need to give him a fair hearing.
Medicine interloper. Neither are they,
We lost the connection with Mr. Boala,
yes.
but you were, Mr. Boala, you were speaking before we went on that break. Mr. Boala, give us a sense of what you mean in this matter. When the APC said it's a different kettle of fish in the Zamfara matter compared to what we saw in Bayelsa and Imo State, how different is it?
In Bayelsa, APC won the election, but APC was disqualified because the deputy governorship candidate of APC was found to be disqualified. In Imo's case, APC said the election was conducted, my votes were not factored, and the court factored it, haven't reviewed the matter, and then gave the decision. Both in Bayelsa and in Imo, the two parties that were before the court, or rather more than two, but two principal parties before the court were APC, PDP, and others. In this case, PDP is not a party in the matter before the Supreme Court. Therefore, PDP is a medusum interloper. Then secondly, you cannot now have a distinguish between these cases, reach an assumption that the decision of the Supreme Court in this instance will be the same in the way the Supreme Court gave its decision in Bayelsa or in Imo. But the principle of law which stands sure, because you see, the Supreme Court is not predictable, because facts differ and cases are decided on their own merit. And so you cannot, the Supreme Court gave a decision in Bayelsa, therefore whether the heavens fall, the Supreme Court is going to be in the same position as though the Supreme Court is starting. Law is flexible. Law and principles of law are flexible. If facts changes, decision can change.
So are you saying, in essence, Mr. Boala, that we might find what a lot of lawyers say, it is strange and unusual, the Supreme Court reversing itself in the case of Zamfara? Because it's not only governorship election, in all the election in Zamfara State, how unusual can you find?
I try to resist the temptation of delving into the matter. But if you ask the question, has the Supreme Court reversed itself before? The answer is in the affirmative. And so if the Supreme Court has reversed itself in the past, what makes you think the Supreme Court cannot reverse itself in the future? So without delving into the matter, one fact is clear. The principle of the law is constant, but facts can change the principle of the law as the cases are determined on their own merit. So therefore, what was decided in Bayelsa and Imo cannot be the same with what is going to be decided in Zamfara. The case does not involve PDP. PDP is a medusum interloper.
All right, we have less than 1 minute to conclude this program, and I would like you to spend 30 seconds and allow Mr. Boala to spend 30 seconds. In this matter, it's a very intense one. If the Supreme Court gives, otherwise, Mr. Matawale goes. If the Supreme Court gives affirmative to the APC, Mr. Matawale goes. If he is against the APC, Mr. Matawale stays. But in your thinking right now, what are the chances of the PDP?
Well, like I said earlier on, the PDP is not a medicine interloper. And like he said, facts, differs from case to case. Now, in this particular case, the Supreme Court had held that all the votes that were casted for the APC in the March 9 elections of 2019 were wasted votes. Based on the facts, clearly, as was, placed before the Supreme Court. The Apex Court had ruled and had determined with finality that those votes were wasted votes. And so the APC should not, at this stage, approach the court to reverse itself contrary to Order 8 through 16. And then Governor Matawale has done so much for the state and has, the feeding program and a lot of changes in security. The security has improved, so the electorate are happy, having him on ground. So the wishes, the true reflection of whatever the ruling will be, should reflect what is on ground in Zamfara State.
We need to close.
The wish and the true reflections.
We need to close now. Mr. Buala, you have less than 20 seconds, in fact. Your final word, Mr. Buala.
Under the doctrine of stare decisis, the judgment of the Supreme Court binds all courts in Nigeria, but does not bind that Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's decision is final, but the Supreme Court is not bound by its previous decision. Facts are what determines the predictability of court. It is not the decision in A case that must determine the decision in B case. And therefore, the court is flexible, but predictably determined by the facts that are brought before the court.
I must sincerely thank both of you, and we anticipate and look forward what happens in the coming days. Thank you so much, Mr. Okorafor, for coming tonight. And Mr. Buala, thank you so much for your thought tonight. Well, in anything that you do and everything that you engage yourself in, the social distancing factor must be put into consideration. If you must work from home, stay alive, everyone, and stay safe. And that's our show tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Shiwa Kimale. Bye for now.